Davis Cup here when we were first starting Tennis Channel. There was a lot of famous stories just from that one, including Andy Roddick looking right into the camera and then relieving himself of his lunch because he was so nervous. But we're all family here. I was going to go before lunch, but they decided to put me after. So hopefully we'll get you right out of that food coma. I am here to talk about Steve Solomon, my father, right over there. So let me start by saying there is no way to separate Steve Solomon from tennis. It's almost like one word, right? There's just a contraction there, any more than you could separate Steve from Steve and Abby Solomon. And by the way, it's really Abby and Steve, and that's the order, and don't get it wrong. There's a word that described the two of them, and still for the most part does, and that's unbeatable. Growing up with parents who were unbeatable, generally by any male team anywhere in the world, is kind of a really cool thing. And that started in the Hamptons when it wasn't always so in vogue for a male and female mixed doubles team, husband and wife, to be able to beat any comers, again, generally male, and extended to the Coachella Valley and the Palm Springs, first at the Racket Club, the Tennis Club, Mission Hills, wherever. And you know, they have been an amazing team ever since. And they have been unbeatable in every way, both on and off the court for 50 years. And while we're here to talk about Steve, we are really here in many ways to talk about Steve and Abby. She's the silent partner, but make no mistake, we know where the power is. Both on the court and off, if you haven't seen her forehand. About his game, you know, it was simple. I mean, growing up, people would say, you know, and you talk about your dad, and your dad was just one of the top national players in the world in his age category for as long as you can remember. And, you know, for me, most life lessons, most business lessons came from the tennis court, just like probably many of the folks in this room. Probably most of the folks in this room, I'd venture to say. I want to get the resume part out of the way because I'm not going to do, if I did, we'd be here for dinner and my mom would be really angry. But a year ago, I had one of the great joys of my life in watching Steve receive the USTA's Lifetime Achievement Award for his contributions to senior tennis down in Florida outside of Lake Nona in front of the entire USTA, 2,000 people in the room, and it was just extraordinary for him to get the Lifetime Achievement Award. That one goes high on the list. And shortly thereafter, he was named as one of the tennis heroes of 2017 by Tennis Magazine. Almost coincidentally, we had purchased the magazine, and they didn't tell me about it because they didn't want anyone to think there was reverse nepotism. The family were reverse nepotism. And it was just amazing to see that and to get the calls from people all over the world. And I was looking at the picture up here of Dad when and this one goes definitely on the top of the list, winning the 40s doubles in the Maccabia Games. Over in Egypt, if I'm not mistaken, and Israel. And that's, you know, on the list of things. Doing that is something that's really remarkable. But, you know, for us, tennis was the breakfast table, and the life lessons learned are the life lessons that make most of the people in this room very, very special. You learn about risk-reward. Not just the wins, but the losses. If I said Stenyak Marek, he would tell me about the singles match where he hit that high backhand volley when it would have been out and he would have won it. We'll never forget. I was about this big when that happened, and right along with the wins. About what's really important in life, tennis is remarkable in that it gives you an ability, for some reason we could spend all day to see. About being fiercely competitive, as every single person on this list clearly is, and yet it's clear that every single person on this list also understands the humility and the fact that it is a game, and it is there to be played and enjoyed and to be celebrated at the end after you've gotten your frustration and your competition out. You learn entrepreneurialism, and, you know, I learned through tennis. You know, Dad, who was, people thought he was in the tennis business. He had a different business, but would visualize things for tennis, whether it was clubs or tournaments, and then they go make them happen out of nowhere, out of an idea. And that's something that you get from the court. And I think it's something that took me a while to learn a lot of those lessons, to be perfectly honest. And you have these great memories. I remember hearing about playing on the wood at the Armory in New York with Bud Collins and Robert Redford, and everybody in this room has these amazing stories, which we spend a lot of time trying to hunt down and document. I remember meeting Redford a little while ago and thinking, does he really remember that? And did that even really happen? And I said, Bob, this is kind of going to sound kind of crazy, but, I think he used to play tennis with my dad. And before I could get another word out, he goes, Solomon, wait, big, tall guy with an American twist? Well, he was good. Is he still playing? Robert Redford never forgot being on the wrong end of Steve Solomon's serve. And by the way, that helped us get him for Barnstormers, so thank you for that, which he narrated. But I think the big lesson was and is seeing the joy that people get and watching how Dad, whether it was the perfect tip, if you just do this with your backhand, this is, and people coming back later and going, thank you so much, or convincing them to fly across the world to play in a tournament because they were really going to love it, and though they didn't think they might be good enough, it changed their life and they became a competitive tennis player. And through him, I, and much more importantly, many, many, many people saw how you can have friends across the globe and how this sport is a uniting force. It could also be frustrating to be his son sometimes. When I first was getting going in Tennis Channel, I went to the first U.S. Open. We were invited to the President's Box, and people would come up, and they were going to come up and tell me how excited they were about Tennis Channel. And they walk right by me and go, Steve, how are you? I'm like, great. Yeah, what's your son doing in here? But really the connective power of the game that I think everybody here understands. Bill Kellogg, again, I was on those courts in the National Father and Sons with my dad, who might have won it had he had a better partner. Both of those things are true. And his partner, Bob Jones, is here, who, is a part of our lives, just as all of your partners have been indelible parts of your life. And the business lessons that I learned from Bob along the way and the advice that he gave me. My friends are here because of tennis and because of my dad. My friends Skip and Joey from high school friends, right, who always liked my mom and dad better than me. They're very good judges of character, as you can see. Carrie Buck, who my dad once said, you should really meet Annette Buck because her daughter's very talented. And she walked in the room and, next thing you knew, as I said, she was practically running the place. Tennis Channel was forever changed because of her. Phil Cox, a very dear friend who's here, who, if any of you get to know, you will get the wisdom from, but the friendship was born on the tennis court. Chris Lewis, right, the SCTA chair, used to stay at our house when Bill Tolley would bring him out for the USC Trojans, right, when they practiced at the Racket Club. The world is a smaller place thanks to the sport, thanks to the SCTA, and thanks to the people who are winning this award today, or being bestowed this award. And so if you could kind of sum it all up, I think and I'm going to actually read this, it's that, I guess the one thing is that more than the love of the game itself, it's the love of sharing the things that make tennis special with other people. And he's been doing that for just a few of the 84 years that he's been around, which is, he was saying, well, maybe we should save this for another 10 years and we could do it then. Why rush this award? But virtually every day I run into people or get a note from someone or a phone call who says, your dad did this, or your dad beat me, or your dad taught me something. And two came to mind out of the literally endless numbers. One was while we were in Philadelphia, and I was, I think, still in college, or maybe even, or maybe just getting out of college, and he was playing the Nationals there, and National Grass Courts, and he had me warming him up, which was sort of, I'm not sure that I was very qualified to do that, but we were warming up on the grass, and I went and sat down next to one of our family's lifelong friends and lifelong ophthalmologist, then Dr. Richard Raskin, and who was a really important person and had great gravitas. And he said, Ken, and you were out on the court, and he said, I want you to know, you guys moved to California, and we're all really proud of your dad and everything that he's done. And I never forgot it. I mean, for someone like that to say that with such conviction. And the other was one of the first days at Tennis Channel. I was going to a lunch with what was hopefully going to be a big client, and it was AIG, and they brought somebody along, a guy I didn't know very well, I've come to know very, very well, named Ray Benton, who I'm sure many of you know, famous in the tennis world, and represented Jimmy Connors and built tours. And Ray kind of reminded me who he was, and I said, I know, I've met you. And over the course of that lunch with this client, it was a big, big insurance company, he stopped the lunch at one point and said, I want to explain something to you. Steve Solomon has done more than anyone in this country to advance senior tennis. And I nearly fell over because I didn't even know Ray was going to be there. And he said that categorically and basically was saying, so whatever his son is telling you to do, you should do it because Steve's the kind of guy you should do it for. And he's the kind of guy you want to be your dad. And welcome to the Southern California Senior Tennis Hall of Fame, Dad.